So again, the fundamental question, what difference does any of this make if our elections are rigged? Interestingly enough, a breaking update for you as we just covered the Utah execution by firing squad. 23 minutes ago, Twitter execution comment causes controversy. Comments about the execution of a prisoner, quote, "I just gave the go-ahead," end quote, by Utah's Attorney General on Twitter this morning, June 18th, were generating lots of comments by others on Twitter and in the world of social media. I just gave the go-ahead. Our last few things to go over on this massive June 17th news purge. All the old boys said, let's get a couple Oregon oddities. And again, my friends, strangely enough, we covered this last week on episode 173. The strange case of false identification and fake identification, where we had the story of one of the guys that works for the all-powerful OLCC here in Oregon, the liquor control. Guy using the ID of an Ohio boy that was murdered 20 years ago. And all the bizarre connections there. It pops up again. Taking it from our own Oregonian, former KOIN TV news director, that's KOIN, former KOIN news director Jeff Allen Brent reaches plea deal, faces prison time. Jeff Allen Brent, the former KOIN 6 news director who spent the last 24 years living under a false identity, pleaded guilty this last Monday to 3 felony charges. The guilty pleas, 2 of which revised earlier pleas of not guilty, were to federal charges of knowingly using an incorrect Social Security number and making false statements to a federally insured bank. The third charge, made in a U.S. attorney's filing on Friday, involved wire fraud conducted against the Oregon Employment Department between 2008 and 2010, during which Brent filed weekly documents claiming to be unemployed while also being paid as a contract employee for the Cascade Policy Institute and the North Dakota-based Franklin Center for Government and Public Integrity. This is a massive story. The Oregonian on OregonLive.com has 3-part story, all the Jeff Allen coverage. And again, that's what we do on Media Monarchy, is we follow the memes and we follow the stories and the semiology and the signs. And truth is stranger than fiction, my friends. The other Oregon note is a much more unfortunate one. Dive teams involved in search for missing boy. This has now been going on for the last couple of weeks, looking for Kyron Horman, who's now been missing, I believe, 2 weeks now. And then we shift gears into the warwhores, and you gotta see the photo. I haven't seen the video. Petraeus faints during grilling over U.S. in Afghanistan, as he should. We get the link from The Guardian and posted up the photo of everyone jumping up to make sure that Petraeus is okay. I'm sure he probably just got lightheaded over the lies and garbage he was talking about, and we're going to touch on him again in just a little bit. But our other warwhores notes, McChrystal Meth faces massive failure in Afghanistan in the next few months. That's from Alternet. 211 bodies misplaced and misidentified at Arlington Cemetery. And it's the animal memes. Kitty cams, briefcase drones at Special Ops Conference. Of course, this coming from Danger Room. Sharon Weinberger, one of the main contributors there on Danger Room, is at this Special Ops Conference. And there are other conferences going on. Of course, public-private, as we mentioned on our latest cyberspace war updates on the B-side we just did. Public-private. The corporations and the state. In commie countries, state takes over the corporations. But in fascist nations, corporations take over the state. And ultimately, the end result is the same goddamn thing. We covered Day of the Dolphins a few weeks ago when we were covering all those massive terror drills going on back, I believe, in April. Dolphins being used, and then we, of course, tied in the sinister forces of Roman Polanski working on a film called Day of the Dolphins. He was going to be the director. Ultimately, he quit the project because as he was scouting locations for Day of the Dolphins, a film about training dolphins that would ultimately be co-opted by rogue elements within the military-industrial complex to assassinate a president, that's when the Manson family murders happened. Again, sinister forces is pretty much the best term we can use to describe this. But here you go, again, an update. 80 dolphins work classified missions for the United States Navy.
We're actually at the Joint Expeditionary Base at Little Creek, and what we're involved in is an exercise called Frontier Sentinel, sort of a maritime homeland security exercise, essentially looking for mines. Have a substantial amount of different forces, Canadian forces, U.S. naval forces, Coast Guard forces, and one of the things that we brought to the table is the Navy's marine mammal mine hunters. The premise is that some evil doers have placed some explosive devices somewhere here in the channel in the harbor around Little Creek, and their job with other mine hunting forces will be to find those simulated pretend practice mines. It does provide the United States Navy, in fact, the only capability anywhere in the world to find buried mines.
We work with them every day, and you feel their body language, and then you know when they're, they're motivated, they're not, they're happy, they're sad. It's like a human being. So of course you build a relationship.
Swimmer defense dolphins, which look for divers, were actually used very effectively in Vietnam in 1970 and 71. And we used the mine hunting dolphins in Iraq at the start of Operation Iraqi Freedom to clear the harbor Qasr so the humanitarian aid ship HMS Sir Galahad could come into the harbor. The program spends about $20 million a year or so with 110 animals or so. You spend about $1 million training the animal. Very valuable assets, no doubt about that.
80 dolphins work classified missions for the U.S. Navy. And as if that wasn't strange enough for you, my friends, our last note on this massive 617 news purge, all the old boys said it's a little bit of West Virginia worry, but it's still keeping with the strange animal meme, kitten born with 2 faces in West Virginia.
Mama cat Isabella gave birth to 6 kittens, but has 7 mouths to feed. To look at this litter, it's hard to tell anything's not right. But one of the kittens looks very different from his brothers and sisters. He was born with 2 faces. He has 4 eyes, 2 noses, and 2 mouths, all on one body, and he nurses with either mouth. His owners have named him what else but Two-Face. This unusual birth defect happens very rarely in animals, and most don't survive, but so far Two-Face is thriving and beating the odds. Myra Lopez, The Associated Press.
I don't really know what to say about all that. I first saw that story, and it was interesting enough as it was, but then, of course, like a lot of stories, when I see that it's from my home state of West Virginia, it always makes me kind of hang my head. Oh, why does West Virginia need mutants getting all kinds of news? We are going to get into some of the latest updates. Speaking of my home state of West Virginia, some of the latest surrounding the Massey coal mine explosion, all that and so much more when we get into hour number 2 of this 174th episode of MediaMonarchy.com. It's June 18th, 2010, but we're going to take a little break with the latest from Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings from their latest record, I Learned the Hard Way, Money.
Yeah, money. Without money,